Hey there. Are you ready for this week's weekly dose of higher consciousness quiz? And are you excited to kind of build your consciousness muscle to see how well you can identify things that are of higher consciousness? Well, if so, you're in luck. Because this week we're taking a look at 3 different things, which is typically what I do on the weekly dose of higher consciousness quiz. And we're looking at which is of highest consciousness: living in the past, living in the present, or living in the future. So I want you to consider that and think about it, and maybe you can put them in order, which is number 1, number 2, number 3 of highest consciousness. Now, before I get to the answer to that, I want to say, hello, my name is Liz Garcia. I am your happy host of Trumpeter of Truth Radio on the podcast, trumpeteroftruthradio.com, which is a podcast channel. And on YouTube, you can find me at trumpeteroftruhtv.com. And this is the place to discover what I call the foundational basics and essential understandings for raising your level of consciousness and building a better life. And I support this intention by putting power and truth into context based on consciousness research by Dr. David R. Hawkins and the Map of Consciousness, which is a proven energy scale to actualize your ultimate human potential. And this is the book that I highly recommend to everyone interested in getting the blueprint for your life. You can't, once you understand the road to everything you could want in life based on consciousness research, it's kind of like a no-brainer. So Dr. Hawkins' original book is Power versus Force. He's written like over a dozen books, but this is the one that was simplified because most people have a hard time comprehending power versus force. It's kind of highly intellectual and scientific in nature. So this is the one I'd recommend. But so part of my weekly dose of higher consciousness is to throw a quiz in every month to help put into context, help you to kind of shore up your awareness of where truth and real power exists. And we'll give you these 3 things to look at. It's like, oh, how are these related to each other? And it's so interesting. This week's quiz, I got the calibrations from consciousnesscalibrations.com. I was thinking about it, about past, present, and future, because I'm in the midst of kind of supporting an Eckhart Tolle course called Conscious Manifestation and his book, The Power of Now. So I'm like, let's see, the power of now and present moment living is kind of a big kind of thing, a big thing out there. So I wanted to see what the truth of it was. That's why we did that today. So before I get to answering today's quiz, I just wanted to put a plug in for the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com, which is a website that I've created to help you take your intentions to raise your level of consciousness to another level by offering a wide variety of free online events, online courses, these podcasts and video casts. And I partner with companies that have been calibrated as to their level of consciousness so that I'm consciously curating content that is, for the most part, of higher consciousness. That's my intention. And I actually had the website and the podcast and the video cast all calibrated as to the level of consciousness to make sure that I'm, in fact, providing value and I speak the truth at whatever level it is. And all of my web properties are calibrating anywhere from 335, I think, or 320 up to 350, which is interesting because that's the level of consciousness I feel like many of us are working on. And it's the level of acceptance and taking responsibilities for our lives and be more intentional about how we create a life and how we treat others and how we are in the world. So to make sure that that website and all that we offer is of higher consciousness, because I don't do calibrations. I had the gentleman who runs consciousnesscalibrations.com do some calibrations for me, which, you know, I'm totally want to be of higher consciousness. And if it wasn't, I was going to have to see what I was screwing up on and make sure I'm doing it properly and aligning properly with higher consciousness. So apparently I am, which is good news. So back to the Mind, Body, Spirit Network. I don't do consciousness calibrations, but I have a fairly intuitive sense of people and what's of higher consciousness. And I do my best to select courses and videos and tools for transformation that are actually going to help you shift in one way or another. And it's really important to note that according to consciousness calibrations, I'd say it's about, let's see, if you go to consciousnesscalibrations.com, they have a whole list of spiritual teachers, and many of them are really well known throughout the world. But the problem is many of them calibrate below 200, though their teachings may not. They as individuals may. However, the teachings may calibrate below 200 or as well in their books. Like whatever they're speaking of or writing of holds no truth. So if you follow them and listen to them and go along with what they're saying when it holds no truth, it's not going to help you. So you're actually going to feel like this downward pull. You're going to start to get resentful, angry, bitter, fearful, whatever it is that it might bring you down into, because it has no power to transform you at all. So the intention of the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com is to provide content that's actually going to shift you, move you up on the map of consciousness, and remove blocks to live in a better life. So that's my little plug that I always do during the quiz week, because we do want to support. That's how I support what I'm providing to you in my Interpreter of Truth videocast and podcast. All right, so let's go to the answer. What do you think is of lowest consciousness? Let's start with the lowest level of consciousness. The lowest level of consciousness calibration is living in the past. And it calibrates at 95 on the map of consciousness, which is significantly below 200. So there's no, if you understand, if you just use the mind to understand that living in the past holds no truth, it holds no reality, it's downward pulling. And that level of consciousness at 95 is fear. Fear is 100. So living in the past is even below fear at 95, which is 10 to the 95th power. Fear is even better. Fear is more powerful at 10 to the 100th power. So just understand, living in the past is a waste of time, and it's only going to bring you down. So you need to learn how do you stop doing that? That's the first question. How do you stop living in the past? Is you've got to learn to let go of the suppressed and repressed emotions that are blocking you. And when you start to practice the mechanism of letting go, which I teach in episode 10, and there's another recent one about letting go of anger, the blocks are going to be removed, and you're not going to look to the past anymore. You'll stop looking back because there's no energy there to bring you back. There's no energy in fear and regret and resentment and bitterness or whatever, was created in the past that you keep moving forward in your energy field, because it's kind of suppressed and repressed emotions that are filed away. They keep dragging you back to the past. So living in the past is the lowest level of consciousness, and it calibrates below 200. And when you understand you don't want to go there, then you'll learn to stop going there. Living in the future is next up. It's not much better at 110 on the map of consciousness. This is going 10 to the 100. So it's 10 to the 110th power is quite a leap up from fear, but it's still in the kind of energy field of fear on the way to kind of wantingness, which is it's still lower levels of consciousness to live in the past or live in the future. No matter how you slice it, you got to let go of both of them. So that brings me to living in the moment, or living in the present moment, is the highest level of consciousness at 200 on the map of consciousness, which I was surprised that it was only 200, but regardless, when you step into courage, that's 200. That's the energy that's required to live a more constructive, happy life. To be present takes courage, because you're gonna stop worrying about the future, and you're gonna forget about the past, and you're gonna accept, I gotta step into courage and let go of all of that, because I just want to be present here and now, where I am, and loving what I'm doing. So it's not a mistake to accept. Many teachers and gurus talk about living in the present moment. It holds truth. It has power. So it's good advice. And that's now puts it into context why the other two are not helpful. And they're just going to bring you, those lower levels of consciousness are like a whirlpool. They're destructive, negatively oriented, and downward pulling. So you want to let go of those so that you can just align with, like, even if it's neutral is 250 on the map, courage is 200, to just be present. And it takes practice to being present. But I can also, from my own experience, the more you let go of old stuff that comes up, the more present you are. So that's the reward of learning the mechanism of letting go of positionalities, letting go of having to be right and prove others wrong, and juicing the ego. That's what Dr. Hawkins would say: stop juicing the ego. And the ego loves the past and the present, the past and the future. So that's it for today's weekly dose of higher consciousness quiz. I'll see you next time.